What is up, all you individuals out there? It's me, full-time anime man, and I am finally back after 5 months of no Ice Wolf. Yeah, I'm not even gonna give y'all any excuses other than just saying sorry it took so long. So yes, for this episode, I have a long script, and I'm going to be breaking it down whenever the story reaches a climactic turn and upload the next part the next day and consider this chapter merely finished once we reach the end of the script. It's still a work in progress. But anyway, with that out of the way, this is What If Deku Was an Ice Wolf, Part 7. Hope you all enjoy. Where we left where we last left off, both the Todoroki twin brothers were in a fight with a league of villains. Izuku, along with Shoto, and also some of the class of 1A teamed up to take down the League of Villains. Everything seems to be going good for them until they were up against the Nomu, the strongest thing in the League's arsenal. The Makapichu, the same Nomu that Izuku managed to defeat while his time's in the woods. When the time came to defeat it, the Nomu ended up hurting Shoto, with Izuku witnessing it. Izuku had unlocked a new ability I like to call Wolf Frenzy. It's still a work in progress. With this ability, Izuku gains immense strength, but there is a drawback. For if he uses it for longer than 2 minutes, his whole body will shut down until he is able to relax his muscles. Think of it as a sort of paralysis, where the body knows what it needs, and in order to get it, it needs to stop itself. You know what? Actually, think of it as a Kaioken. Well, actually, it's exactly a Kaioken from Dragon Ball Z. If you use it for too long, your body ends up getting damaged, and you need to relax in order to recover. And also, when in this frenzy, it is impossible to stop Izuku. If someone or something hurts him and anyone that he cares about, he will destroy everything in his path until he is able to achieve that goal of gaining his vengeance. So he's going to have to watch his temper from now on. Anyway, back in the story, Izuku used it to defeat the Nomu and was successful in destroying it, using another new ability I like to call cremation, where he's able to burn anyone or anything from the inside to ashes. The battle has ended and the heroes have won, but Shigaraki and Korigiri escaped, but not before Izuku injured Shigaraki, breaking his Achilles in the back of his leg. I might have said that wrong, but let's move on. Izuku and Shoto stared at each other, glad that everything was over, but then Bakugo then blew up Izuku's back, thinking that he was with the League of Villains. Shoto took a hold of Izuku's hand, and he unlocked a new ability that I like to call inseparable. With this, the two boys cannot be separated, no matter how hard anyone tries. A day has passed, and Izuku wakes up in the hospital bed, wearing a hospital gown. Confused, he tries to move, but found his entire body in a lot of pain, which is from the wolf frenzy. Ouch! What the hell happened to me? Looking over to his right, he sees Shoto laying in a bed next to him, still asleep. He also looks down to his hand and sees that Shoto is holding it. Izuku looks closer to Shoto and he takes a sigh of relief knowing that he's okay. He smiles and says, "Where are we? This looks like a hospital. And what's going on with my hand?" Izuku tries to separate himself from Shoto, but finds it impossible. He eventually leaves it alone, and looks around some more. He looks over and sees a glass of water. Feeling desperately thirsty, Izuku gulps it down within a matter of seconds. That's better. A few seconds would pass, and Izuku would stretch his muscles out to give himself more mobility, working through the pain. Looking over, Shoto was just waking up. Izuku called his name. "Shoto, Are, are you okay? Shoto sits. Shoto then lays there in his bed and then he sits up saying, yeah, I'm fine. How about you? You know me. If you're good, then I'm good. Both of the boys then give out a small chuckle. Shoto says, well, all jokes aside, I'm glad that we're back together again. Even if I don't quite understand what this is, he gestures to his hand that are stuck together. Izuku speaks. Yeah, it must be something to do with the tether quirk. What were you feeling when it happened? Shoto thinks for a second and then he finally comes to a conclusion. Well, I was feeling very desperate. I didn't want to be separated from you again. And I didn't want nobody to hurt you or use you anymore. I just thought if you were going to go through that, I should go through it with you. Izuku smiles and says, yeah, that the feeling's mutual, but you should never have to go through what I've been through. Come on, bring it in. Both of the boys would then hug each other while laying in the bed, and Izuku would say, yep, this is the most uncomfortable hug I have ever been in. Yep, me too, said Shoto. Both of the boys would then lay back down in their beds, and they would take a sigh of relief. Shoto starts a conversation, saying, hey, Izuku, so that scar around your left eye, I caused that when I pushed you? Yeah, but don't worry, it's nothing to worry about. I'm not mad at you about it. You were just trying to protect me, that's all. Well, I'm glad you're not mad. I mean, heck, how could I be? And the wolves that raised you, they took care of you and they trained you in their ways. What was that like? Izuku takes, Izuku thinks for a second and he says, well, it was exactly like a family. Even though my memories were gone, I always felt like something was missing. And now I finally remember. It was Fuyumi, Natsuo, Toya, Mom, and you. And the last memory that I saw when I saw Khan draw his last breath, Izuku interrupted him, saying Khan was a great alpha. He was the one who taught me everything. The last memory of him, I wish all the time I was there to fight alongside them, to protect them like they protected me, but it is what it is, and I've learned to let it go. They're in a better place now. Shoto feels guilty for having to talk about that. I'm sorry that happened to you. It's fine, and there are just some things we need to talk about anyway, just to catch back up. Like, what happened to Toya? I was in your memories as well, and it's awful what happened to him. What I saw, Dad either hurt him or he pushed him too hard. But what do you think happened? Shoto sighs, but before he could answer, the room then started overflowing with cops and pro heroes, aiming their weapons at Izuku, telling him to put his hands up. Both of the boys would comply, but he couldn't quite put both of his hands up. Anyway, the pro heroes that came in were Death Arms, Kamuri Woods, Mirko, and Mount Lady. One of the police officers told Izuku to not move and for someone to put court cancellation cuffs on him. Another officer puts the cuffs on him, but Shoto says, no, wait, he's innocent. Kamuri Woods would approach Shoto and would say, we don't know that for sure, young man. For all we know, he could still be working with the League of Villains that attacked you and your classmates. But not him. He was under the influence of a parasite that was implanted in his brain. Anything that he has done, it's not his fault. Well, Mr. Todoroki, It's better to be safe than sorry. Right now, would you kindly let go of his hand so that we could take him in for questioning? Shoto looks at Izuku and Izuku says, "It's gonna be okay, Shoto." Shoto then thinks for a second and he says, "Well, you see, I would, but I can't." Kamuri Woods would speak, "Look, I know it's hard to let him go after not seeing him for such a long time, but," Shoto interrupts him, "No, I mean, I literally can't because I don't know what's happening here. And I don't know how to stop it. If I knew how to do it, I would. So you'll have to take me to." The main officer then says, "Fine, but before we go, how are you both you boys feeling?" Both of the boys would say that they're fine, and then they would get them both some specialized clothes because it's hard to put a shirt on when you can't get your other hand through the loop. And then they would be taken down to the police station for questioning. Both of the boys would look at each other, and Izuku says, "Shoto, you don't have to." Shoto just smiles and says, "Oh well, I have no choice. We're kind of stuck right now." He shakes his arm where they're stuck together. Both of the boys then smile, and about an hour later, we then appear at the police station in the interrogation room. While in the interrogation room, both of the boys are sitting in a metal chair with a metal table sitting in front of them. They just sit and wait for someone to show up. Izuku speaks. "Shoto, what do you think's going to happen?" "I don't know. They're probably just going to ask you a lot of questions and try to play the old good cop, bad cop thing on you." "Oh well, I have nothing to hide. I'm just going to tell them everything about All for One and hopefully that they could stop him before he could build up his army once more. Luckily for us, we threw a wrench in that plan. But of course, All for One is a very powerful and dangerous man. Who knows what other things he's got up his arsenal." Shoto places a hand on Izuku's shoulder and says, "No matter what they throw at us, we'll face it together. Thanks." The door then opens, and both of the boys think that it's going to be an officer or pro hero, but to their surprise, standing there at the doorway at 7'2", with blonde hair and a signature smile on his face, he entered the room, All Might. Izuku spoke in a surprised voice, and so did Shoto. All Might." All Might then walked into the room and shut the door. But his voice was more calmer instead of his usual excitement. "Hello there, boys. How are you both doing?" Izuku couldn't help but stare with embarrassment. Shoto speaks. "We're fine." Izuku stares at the ground, and then he quickly looks back up at All Might and says, "I'm sorry, Toshinori. I should have listened to you. You told me not to believe him, and of course, look what happened." "Wait, how do you know my name?" asked All Might. Izuku would say that All for One told him. "Oh well, it's okay, young Todoroki. He tricked you, and he used your naiveness against you. Don't worry about it. It's not your fault." Shoto looks to Izuku, and he remembers seeing what Izuku had did to All Might when he punched him underneath the bridge. I'm glad even the number one hero doesn't hold grudges," said Shoto. Izuku smiles and says, "So, what are you doing here?" "I'm here to simply ask you questions, and I think you already know what the first one is." Izuku then nodded his head and told him everything about the whereabouts of All for One and about all the things that Izuku has been through. Even telling him about the attack on his father and telling him about the kidnapping of his mother and putting him putting her into a hotel. All Might says, okay, and where is she now? Izuku says, Akintelu. What? Akintelu. One more time. Akintelu. Izuku says it with a more irritating voice. Why not? Why not what? Why can't you tell me? I just did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. Really? Yeah. Then what's the name of it? Akintelu. Shoto gets in the conversation saying, okay, before this goes out of hand, she's literally at a hotel named Akintelu. And how do you know this? Asked All Might. Because I saw it. What do you mean you saw it? Izuku explains that the implanted parasite made him and Shoto share each other's memories, and even went on to explain about how he helped free him from the mind control. I see, said All Might. So, that being said, you can't really be held responsible for your actions. But even so, we still need evidence. Do you have proof? Both of the boys think for a second, then Izuku says, yeah. In the fire zone of the USJ, after I was freed from it, I expelled it from my body on the top of the tallest building in the fire station of the USJ. There should be some of it still there. Okay, I'll have a forensic team go over there and retrieve some of it. Hopefully it's still there. As for All For One, I'm going to head to his location. Hopefully he hasn't fled yet. Izuku speaks up. Now, All Might, I'm not gonna lie. There's a huge chance that they may have ran away already from that spot. And they may have more people. So, it's probably be best if you bring other heroes with you just in case. Thank you, young Todoroki. Oh yeah, and there's a few people here that would like to speak with you. All Might then gets up and then he leaves the room. As he opens the door, Natsuo and Fuyumi enter, practically running towards Izuku and Shoto. Fuyumi speaks. Izuku! Shoto! Oh my god, are you boys okay? Fuyumi tightly embraces the boys, and they both comment that they're alright. Izuku couldn't help but stare at Fuyumi with guilt. What's wrong? Asked Fuyumi. Izuku speaks. I'm sorry, sis, for what happened. Izuku tries to fight back the tears, but he couldn't help it. It's just, when I saw Dad hit you, I couldn't help it. Fuyumi then grabbed Izuku, wrapping her arms around his neck tightly, bringing him in for a hug. While patting the top of his head, she said, shh. It's okay. We heard everything. It wasn't your fault. That thing in your head made you do it. Izuku immediately objected to these terms, and he said, No. I did that all on my own free will. I hated Dad so much that my anger got the best of me, and Fuyumi then brings him back in for a hug, and she said, shh, just calm down. It's gonna be alright. We're gonna get things figured out. Right now, we need to get you an attorney. Natsuo gets in the conversation saying, yeah, we'll be right there with you the entire time. Everyone then smiles, but then their moment was interrupted when a girl's voice can be heard coming from the doorway. Well, actually, I think I could help you with the attorney part. The door opens, revealing Melissa. Izuku speaks with excitement. Melissa! Natsuo speaks. Izuku, you know this girl? Yeah, I do. When I got back into town, before I found her, she was about to be kidnapped by a sludge monster, and I saved her. Melissa steps into the room and says, and I never forgot it. It's great to see you, Izuku. Melissa then runs over to Izuku and hugs him, and Izuku returns the hug, saying, it's really great to see you too. How are you doing? Melissa explains, well, I heard about the attack on the USJ, and then when I heard about your name on the news, that you were with the villains, I just knew that something wasn't right, so I listened to your conversation with my Uncle All Might. Izuku speaks. Wait, you're All Might's niece? Yeah, I even heard about what you did to him under the bridge when I left. But he's a tough guy, so it's okay. So, anyway, I told my dad about what you did, and he wants to help you. Really? Yes. Since you weren't in control of your actions, and once the police find specimens of the parasite, we should be able to prove you innocent. Izuku speaks. Well, thank you, Melissa. I really do appreciate it. No need to thank me. It's the least I could do. Melissa looks over to Shoto and says, Oh, hi there. You must be his brother. Yes, I am. I heard a few things about you, Melissa. My brother here has got a crush on you. Izuku then grudgingly elbows Shoto's shoulder and he says, Shut up, Shoto. Melissa blushes a little bit herself and says, Well, anyway, just keep cooperating with the police and pro heroes and you'll be just fine. I'm gonna go talk with my dad and get you an attorney. Melissa then takes Izuku's hand and says, You're gonna be just fine. I know you will. Izuku speaks. Yeah, of course. Once again, thank you for your help. She walks towards the door and she says, Well, bye for now. I'll see you later, Izuku. Izuku then waves as she leaves the room. Izuku sighs and he looks to Shoto, and out of nowhere, Natsuo then laughs and puts Shoto in a headlock while noogieing his head with his fists and says, You little jerk, you're breaking the bro code #1. Never humiliate your brother in front of his crush. As he does this, Izuku could feel the pain on his head of Natsuo noogieing Shoto. Natsuo, could you stop that? You're hurting me too. Natsuo and Fuyumi look at Izuku a little confused, and Izuku would explain to them about his third quirk, Tethered. After a minute of telling them, Fuyumi says, Oh, is that so? Well, I suppose it does make sense. People have had theories that twins do have some sort of telepathic connection. Although, I have to ask you, does this quirk cause you boys any sort of inconvenience for one another? Izuku and Shoto look at each other and they both give out their answer. No. Izuku continues. If anything, this quirk helped save us. Shoto says, Yeah, and besides, without it, I wouldn't have known that Izuku was alive. Yeah. After a few minutes of talking, two men entered the room wanting to speak. Hi there. I'm Inspector Frank, and this is Detective Alexander. We're here to question the suspect and the witness. But unfortunately, all family and friends must leave the room, please. And thank you. The Todoroki family then looked at each other, and Fuyumi says, It's gonna be alright, Izuku. When this is all done, I'm gonna make you your favorite food, okay? Izuku nodded his head and smiled and said, Okay. I'll see you guys later. Fuyumi and Natsuo then leave the room, but before he closed the door, Natsuo says, See you guys later. Both of the boys wave, and it's just the boys and the detective and investigator. Some time would pass, and the police went to the spot where Izuku told them that the parasite was, and luckily it was still there. And the police were able to take specimens of it. At the hotel, they were able to pick up Rei and bring her back to the police station for questioning. Soon after, All Might, along with other pro heroes, went to the bar where the League of Villains was, but by the time that they showed up, they were already gone. All Might spotted a note on the counter that read, "Catch me if you can." All Might then clenched the note in his fist, crumbling it. Back at the police station of the interrogation room, Izuku was on the topic when All for One spreaded the parasite to his from his from his cerebellum to the rest of his brain, and that's how it got complete control of me. Frank speaks. Very interesting. You've been through a lot of hell, but before we get to questioning on the USJ, there's something that you boys need to know. Both of the boys then looked at each other and back to the police officers. Do you want to know what my quirk and Alexander's quirk is? Both of the boys then looked back at each other and they were actually curious on what their quirks were. And so they asked, "Yeah, what are your quirks?" Frank says, "Well, with my quirk, I have the ability to scan and analyze a scene and recreate events that took place in a reconstruction. And the way my ability works to reconstruct a sequence of events is both hyper advanced and entirely unique to others. To perform a reconstruct, a physical and circumstantial detail must first be analyzed in solution, providing vital information such as direction of travel, velocities, and trajectories, likely collision based on material density, and friction like that. My quirk is called replay, and that is why I'm an investigator." Alexander, who was mainly quiet the whole time, spoke, and with my quirk, I am able to measure several physiological indicators, such as blood pressure, pulse, respiration, and skin conductivity, while a person is asked and answers a series of questions. Shoto speaks, so you're basically a human lie detector test. That's right. And while I was reading your polygraph, Izuku, I couldn't help but notice that your heart rate was accelerating a bit. When you got home, so we're going to ask you a few questions. And if I detect a lie, I will point it out to my partner here. Got it? Izuku was confused, for he thought that he was telling the truth the entire time, or so he think he was. He did not want to get on these cops' bad side, so he decided to be careful on how he answered them, and just be as truthful as possible. Izuku just said, "Okay." "Okay, first, were you really lost in the woods for 9 years? Yes or no?" Izuku was unsure because his vision was still blurry when he tried to think about it, so he decided to say no in a questionable tone. Alexander was confused, for the results were inconclusive. Frank then said, "Inconclusive?" Alexander goes on to explain, "Yeah, in other words, I can't read anything off of him when we ask him that question because he doesn't even know the truth. It probably has something to do with his amnesia. If it's hard for him to remember, then his brain doesn't send signals to the rest of his body for me to read." Frank then says, "Okay, that's fine then. How about this? Before you got in the car with All for One, were you aware of his backstory before then?" Izuku responded with no. Alexander said that was the truth. Next question. Were you aware of the parasite in your head when you woke up in the bar? No. That was the truth. Did you yourself save Melissa from a villain? Yes, that was the truth. But before they could answer the next question, Alexander whispered something into Frank's ear, and after a few seconds, Frank asked a question. By your own free will, did you attack your father, NG Todoroki? Izuku lets out a deep sigh, and then he says, Yes, that was a lie, said Alexander. Izuku looked to the man in confusion. Wait, what? Frank speaks. Listen, Izuku, we're trying to help you, and if you tend to keep secrets from us, it's going to be hard for us to prove your innocence. So just be honest with us. Izuku speaks. What? But it's true. I did attack my father out of my own free will. He slapped my sister in the face and I lost control. I am telling you the truth. Both Frank and Alexander look to each other with a surprised look, and Frank says, Wait, what happened between your father and your sister? He slapped her in the face because she called me her brother in front of him, and I lost control of myself. Frank and Alexander then share a look, and they say, Give us a minute. They get up and they leave the room, and the boys are now left alone with each other. Shoto speaks. Izuku, are you okay? I I don't know, Shoto. If the cops are saying it's true that I didn't attack Dad out of my own free will, then I don't know. I just don't know. Well, shouldn't that be good for you? You never really meant to hurt anyone. And that thing in your head did mess around with you a lot. Izuku looks to the ground, but what about All Might? I felt like it wasn't me that did that. But when I told them about it, apparently they didn't detect a lie there. Shoto says, Well, they did lie to you and say that All Might was the bad guy. Well, that is true. But don't worry about it, that Izuku. Just think of now. A few minutes passed, and Frank and Detective Alexander entered the room and sat down. Okay, boys, since it's true what you're saying, and we didn't detect any lie when you told us that your sister got hit by your father, we're going to be doing some digging around and asking you guys some questions about your life at home after we do the crime investigation attack on the USJ. We'll mostly be asking your father some questions. But for now, let's get back to the topic. They continue with the rest of the story, with Izuku telling them everything in the rest of the attack on the USJ, and how he freed himself, and how Shoto helped him free him from the parasite, and that they took him down. And the last thing that Izuku remembered was a loud boom, and he passed out. And that's all I remember, said Izuku. Interesting, said Alexander. And I didn't sense any lies, so he's telling the truth. So we could definitely prove your innocence. But for now, we need to go ask your father some questions. From what you told us, he's got a lot of explaining to do. The men then get up and they leave the room once again, and Shoto and Izuku were still sitting there in the chair. I think that went well, said Shoto. Yeah, said Izuku. Hey, I have to ask, who was that person that blew me up? Oh, well, that was one of my classmates, Katsuki Bakugo. His quirk is explosions. He has the ability to sweat nitroglycerin and ignite it. Oh, well, that's pretty cool. But, like, what if he's near, like, a barbecue grill? Does he tend to explode? I have no idea. Izuku then asks, and how does he still have hands, or how is he not, like, blown to bits? Isn't nitroglycerin, like, really highly explosive chemical when
Mom,
ignited? Shoto would think for a second, saying, "That's a really good question. I don't know how he's still in one piece." But I digress. Both of the boys would go on having their conversation about Shoto's classmates. Shoto would say, and so yeah, there's this one guy with the purple head, and he had sticky balls, I think, and he got expelled from school because our teacher saw no potential in him. Are you serious? Yeah, I'm serious. Both of the boys would give out laughing, and their moment was interrupted by the door opening, and who emerged from the door shocked both of the boys. It was their mother, Rei. Both of the boys then stood up while saying, "Mom!" "Hey, boys," said Rei. They both would get up and they would run towards her and tightly embrace her in a hug, glad to see her. Rei would tightly embrace the boys back, and after a few seconds she speaks, "Izuku, I was told about what happened and the parasite. Is it gone?" "Yeah, Mom, it's gone now." "Oh, thank goodness. What about you, Shoto? Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine, Mom. What about you? Aren't you supposed to be back in the hospital?" "Well, I was, but then the police said that they needed me for important purposes and asked me questions about my life at home before the hospital. So I told them everything. I told them the truth about what your father had put you boys through and what he had been doing to me. Even what I heard about Toya. The police want to question you boys, and I think it would be in your best interest if you just told them the truth as well. Don't worry, it's all going to be okay." Both of the boys then nodded their heads in agreement, but as they did, the door then bursted open to revealing the flaming hero Endeavor, fire emanating off of his body and a cane in his right hand. "You." That's going to do it for today's episodes. I wonder where this is going to go. Anyway, I hope that everyone enjoys this. Hopefully, you'll enjoy the next part tomorrow. If you made it to the end of this video, consider yourselves #blessed, and I hope everyone has a nice day. Goodbye.